Hey there, it's Saturday, March 14th, 2015. It's the first day I've had a chance to get out here on the Prairie Orchard to do a little bit of work on my trees. I'm out here with Sasha, as you see her walking there in the foreground. One of the things I did today was train some of my trees. These are pear trees. I got a row of pear trees here near my property line. This here in front of me is a Rousselet de Rem pear tree that is about, I guess, 2.5 years into the ground. And as you can see, I have a number of branches coming out as opposed to the standard format pear tree of a single trunk going up. I have several long branches coming out. And if you look closely, you'll see that I've actually tied off some of these and have tied them down to some wooden pegs here in the ground. In fact, I've done it on the right hand side and then another here on the left hand side in order to spread those trunks away from each other. I choose to train my trees this way because I prefer not to use a ladder, and so I'm trying to take advantage of two trunks and spreading those trunks out so I have branches more like an apple tree to pick my apples, as opposed to having a 12 to 15 foot pear tree and having to get a ladder to pick those fruit. Next door over here is a Jargonelle pear. This is a really old pear tree. It goes back to the ancient Greeks. Some people think that this is the Parum primum, and I've done the same thing. I have a couple trunks coming out of the ground here on this 4-year-old tree, and I've tied each of these trunks off to some pegs in the ground to spread these two branches and develop more of a wide tree lower to the ground, as opposed to what a pear tree usually likes to do, which is grow tall with a single trunk. So we'll see how this goes and how these pear trees look ultimately. A little experiment of my own. Just down the row from the other trees is our white Doyen pear. This is one of the younger trees. I put this in the ground only a couple of years ago, and you recall last year it flowered and actually fruited quite well, and I anticipate it'll do the same again this year. You can see I've actually tied up one of the branches here to pull it away from the center of the tree, again to create a more spread out tree. But I'm really excited to see these buds, these fruit buds, looking really robust again this year. So hopefully this will be an annual bearer as opposed to a biennial bearer, which would be a little disappointing. At the same time, I've always been concerned about the fruit burden for such a small tree, and this year I may cut back some of the fruitlets just to give the tree a chance to make the remaining fruit big, and also to do some growing. So that's our white Doyen pear tree that will hopefully have a second fruiting season for us this year. Just wanted to show you one more pear tree. This is a tree that's been here in the ground for about 5 years now, and it's borne fruit for the past 3 years. We originally bought it thinking it was a bosque. That's what it was labeled at the nursery, but it's borne fruit that looked more like Anjou Pear. I wanted to show you this tree because it is a little more mature, and it's got these beautiful sort of fruit buds here at the top of the tree and scattered throughout the branches. But I also just wanted to show you that I've been doing a little bit of pruning, and there's some examples of a pruning technique here on this tree that are worth showing. Here's the stub that I left at the place of a water spout, which is basically a young branch that has come out off of a more mature branch and going straight up parallel to the trunk. It really just shades out the middle of the tree, including any fruit that are developing there. So I think it's good to take that out. I sort of like to have some of these more horizontal branches moving away from the center of the trunk so that we can capture more sunlight, as opposed to a dense canopy very close to the main trunk of the tree. So one pruning technique is to, or focus of pruning is to target those branches which are going straight up and really just shading the rest of the tree. The other is to take off branches that are coming off the bottom of the tree. They're not going to get shade, and even if they do fruit, I'm sorry, they are going to get too much shade, and even if they do fruit, they're not going to ripen properly because they're shaded out by the branch above them. I also have cut out some branches that are pointing into the center of the tree, again creating a lot of shade instead of providing some sunlight to the center of the tree and some wind and air going through the center of the tree to avoid diseases. So a little bit of pruning this weekend here on what is probably an Anjou pear, now about 5 years in the ground. Here is my Honeycrisp tree, which has actually been in the ground for about 6 years now. I did a little pruning on this one and its twin behind me. I just wanted to show you a couple of things that I've done. I'm trying to get the branches to grow outward, and so here you can see where I pruned one that continued up close to the center of the tree, and I pruned it at an outward facing branch. So this coming year, growth season, we should see some growth in this branch that is moving away from the center of the tree, again providing a broader canopy, more aeration in the center of the tree to avoid disease and to keep any fruit that happens to be hanging there healthy. I've also cut some branches that are growing up into the center of the tree here. I chopped this one short just in case over the next couple of years I can develop some little fruit buds here on this part of the tree, but I'm not going to let it grow significantly. Up close to the top of the tree, you'll see I actually truncated that tall branch there. That branch is probably at 8 feet, 7.5 or 8 feet. And as you can see, I cut it to an outward facing branch. It's more horizontal. I'd like to avoid ladders if I can when picking my fruit in the future. And so I'm trying to limit the height of some of our trees. And you can see over here, this one I sort of left in place, but eventually I'm going to have to take out that one as well and leave it at an outward pointing branch that's more horizontal. But I think we've reached the limit of the height of this tree, and I'd like to see the bottom part of the tree now flesh out and begin bearing fruit. Last year we had our first flower on it. That was a single flower close to the trunk on a small branch. This year, maybe we'll have more flowers and maybe even some fruit on this Honeycrisp apple tree. Besides my Honeycrisp apple trees, the next 3 oldest trees are this Caville Blanc d'Hiver. The next one down the row here is Ashmead's Kernel, and then the third one down there is Asapis Spitzenberg. All 3 of these trees flowered last year, and I anticipate they will flower again this year. We can see some nice flower buds, but unfortunately they didn't develop into healthy fruitlets. I wonder if that was a pollination issue or if the trees were just too young to bear fruit at that particular point in time. We'll see what happens again this year. The Caville Blanc d'Hiver, despite being one of the older trees, is still quite small. It's definitely dwarfed. Both the Ashmead's Kernel and the Asapis Spitzenberg have really grown in a much more vigorous manner. Again, we had flowers, blossoms on this tree last year, but no fruit on this Ashmead's Kernel maybe this year. And then last year we had one fruit on Asapis Spitzenberg, one apple, that actually I think was hanging right about here. And unfortunately, as you may have seen in my other videos, that first apple of our orchard lasted until about September, got pretty sizable, and then disappeared one week. I suspect it fell to the ground in the wind and was dragged off by a raccoon. My hope is that we have some good blooms and actually more apples this year. I'd really like to taste the first apple from my apple orchard. This is a follow-up on some grafting I did last spring here on this Sargent crabapple tree. You may have seen some of the videos where I grafted some scion from eating apples onto an ornamental crabapple tree, the Sargent crabapple. I've had success on other branches in this same bush, but last spring did these 2 trees right here, which are these 2 branches right here, which are grafted with Orleans Renette, which is supposedly a very tasty and wonderful apple, European apple. You may recall I used some very unorthodox techniques to do this grafting, and I, as such, have pretty ratty looking graft right here, but I have to sort of say it looks like it survived the winter. This tree has some buds that actually look very viable and healthy, and the same with the other graft that's right here. As I look at some of the other grafts which failed last year, and one that went into the winter maybe with some life, I see actually this Liberty graft right here with what looks like dead wood above it. So I doubt very much that actually survived the winter, but we will see. And then, as shown before, the results of these grafting experiments using various techniques have given me some Westfield Seek No Further and Honeycrisp, as well as Ashmead's kernel here on this Sergeant crabapple tree. Hey, Sasha. The last tree I wanted to show you is this Jefferson Plum, which I planted 2 years ago, and which has grown very vigorously. You can see here that I'm training this one too to pull the branches apart from the center of the tree. But before I actually pulled those branches apart, they went up to about 9.5 feet. So this grew from about a 4-foot tree to a 9.5-foot tree, even though they're just little sprigs, in 2 years. Pretty impressive. I guess I'm hoping at some point in the next year or two I actually start to see some fruit. So this is a Jefferson Plum, one of the handful of plums here on the Prairie Orchard. Sasha enjoying the sun and a piece of quince. Some quince fruit from last year. She's chomping on it. Tastes good.